Hey everyone, so in today's episode I speak with Jana Johnson, and this woman is next level. Sometimes it feels rare to meet teachers who have really walked the path and embody their own teaching so beautifully, and this is Jana. So before we get into the conversation, I'll give you a quick insight into who this amazing mystery woman is. Jana is a psycho-spiritual therapist, and she actually left her corporate background to create her own psycho-spiritual healing center. At a certain point, her interest in the psychological realm was superseded by her desire to fully connect with that which was bigger than her mind, and exploring spirituality became the focus of her life. So Jana has a background. She has a background in foundational psychology, metaphysical study, South American earth-based practices, healing modalities through Buddhism, universal science of mind, Gestalt Therapy, Jungian Dreamwork, master level Reiki, to intuitive energy work. So as you can see, this woman has a wealth of wisdom to share. So I'm super excited to share this conversation with you all. I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today I'm joined by Jana Johnson. And because this woman is so widely embodied and diverse in her area of expertise, it felt near impossible to introduce you in real time. So I actually pre-recorded something.
Okay.
Yeah, to make sure I did it justice.
Right.
So it also means we can get straight into the conversation, which is nice. So welcome.
Thank you.
Of course. So Jana and I actually met at the beginning of this week, and instantly I felt really inspired by you and your energy and your presence and your spirit and your depth of knowledge. So perhaps to set the scene, I'd love you to share which lineages and teachings and philosophies, concepts have been, I guess, most impactful in shaping, who you are and how you see the world, your worldview.
Yeah. Honestly, it hasn't really been the teachings. It's been my experiences that have really shaped where I am now. And it's only, I would say, in the past few years that I've actually gone to the texts and learned more in depth about the things that I was experiencing.
Yeah.
But lineage-wise, I have a beautiful teacher in New York City. Her name is Julie Winter,
Mm.
and I met her in 2002, and I studied with her until 2012 when I left New York City. And she was the first one who really helped me to understand the energy body and understand my sensitivities to it. And and so she was really, really the first person that helped me understand who I was in that respect. And then I would say my other teacher is, I call him Baba. Sri Nandan is his name in India.
Yeah.
And he would call his path Swatantra.
Mm.
And meaning swa, meaning the essence of yourself, and tantra meaning method. And so it's not a set of rules or disciplines to follow. There's no renunciation, there's no dogma.
Mm.
It really is based on who you are as a person, your kind of tendencies, your lineage. It's very personal. And so when he works with people, everyone has a different relationship to him, and so, or with him. And so mine has been very, very experiential. And of course, he teaches me in some ways, but it's not like you would say, I call him my teacher, but it's not like he talks about the scriptures or text or anything like that. But there is definitely a tantric line through there, and a Hindu line that I have no reason to be familiar with, but yet it's so very familiar to me. And so that's kind of where I've gone deepest into. And then really it's come down to the yogic kind of philosophy of life. And it's only, like I said, in the past few years that I've gotten into reading a lot more about it and studying it from that aspect after kind of living it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And you spoke about the energy body. And I'm curious, like so many people see spirituality as, woo-woo.
Mm,
And I'm curious, how do you see spirituality? Yeah.
yeah. Um, well, I would say that I tend to not even talk about being on a spiritual path anymore because I feel like life is truly that's just the path. That's the path.
Totally.
And in Tantra, everything is sacred, right? And so there is no specific, this is spirituality and this is everything else. Everything is, you can't not be spiritual. It sounds, even if you think that you're not, in my
Totally.
opinion.
They say we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human
Yeah,
experience, right?
exactly.
And I guess if we were to zoom out, you could say that yoga is deeply related to understanding the mind, and tantra is deeply related to understanding energy. And you spoke about, that teacher being someone that, shed light on the
Yeah.
energy body. How does tantra, I guess, help to protect, cultivate, and guide right use of energy? And would you actually sort of agree with that as a premise for tantra? Or
Well, first of all, I will say I'm not a scholar in Tantra. So I'll just tell you my experience. And that's all I can do. Um, my experience is the strengthening of my energetic body. And to do that needed focus, needed discipline, sadhana practice, very hardcore for a long time. All of my focus, and this was just my path. This is not everybody's path. This is just what happened for me. Complete focus on paying attention to what was happening within me. And that built up the fire within me that we all have, right? But I then had a direct contact with it. That sounds kind of weird because you can't be out of contact with it, but the the experience of it, and from that, that affects everything in my life because I can understand when, if I go into a certain environment or I have a certain interaction, um, everything, or I eat a certain food or in a certain restaurant, even, like everything has this kind of energetic effect. And so you know what feels good and feels alive, and you know what feels not so good. And so then you have a choice. And then this is where you also, it's imperative you also control the mind.
Mm.
And so this is where I think it's important because people more and more are having these, you know, chronic experiences, but they haven't controlled the mind. And so it's just an experience. And some people think that, oh, now this means whatever it might mean to them. But if you haven't actually controlled the mind as well, the ego is clever.
oh yeah,
Ego is really clever. So, yes, it's about the energetic body, but it's also very important to understand the mind.
yeah. And I guess from all your life experience and the teachers and lamas and masters and gurus you have worked with, what have you seen to be the most effective way for people to shift out of the thinking mind and into awareness, into presence?
Um, for me, it was my daily practice
Mm.
every day for, I would say, probably 4 years, every single day. I mean, if I missed 2 or 3 days,
Mm.
maybe.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I did it twice a day. But every day I did it. And I did it with intention. And the practice for me, it was about a 40-minute practice.
Yeah.
So there was movement, there was pranayama,
Yes.
and there was meditation. And because of who I am, that was my best portal in.
Yeah.
That's not everybody's. But for me, that's what I needed. I needed that discipline
Yeah.
and that continual coming back, coming back, coming back. And for about a year, at the beginning, I was still in Bali. after I had met Baba. And so I was doing my practice here, but I was still out in the world a lot.
Yeah.
But then I moved to India. And once I got there, my whole focus was just on this path. And so I didn't have a social life. I didn't have anything outside. So it was much easier for me to just every day I did my sadhana practice. Every night I did a homa, a fire practice. And then I sat with Baba every day. And so an easier way, it would seem, but it was not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And there's many people who could not do that. But, you know, I would say, I would go as far as to say that was my spiritual lineage, which I don't really understand completely, but that's what it has to be because I have no DNA of Indian or Hinduism or like nothing. I'm Minnesota mud,
Million
like
apostles.
you know. But there was definitely just deep, deep within it.
Yeah. And a sadhana, for those that aren't aware of the term, is like a daily devotion, right?
Yeah,
What would you say you were devoted to?
myself, absolutely, but not to Jana, to whatever it was that was emerging from here, and honestly, to life. And if you call it the cosmic intelligence, or you call it Shakti or the Devi or whatever, but um, it's not. This is where I think, sometimes the self-care thing gets up it all.
Yeah, from selfish to selfless.
Yeah, and
But
and because it's beyond this personality, and yes, it's good to get a massage and, take care of eat well and everything, but there's something so much bigger, and there was such a longing in me for that,
yeah.
to be in that.
Yeah. And I think so much of spirituality is this connection to something greater than yourself, something greater than the sum total of your individual experience. And I've heard you mention that you are in awe of, cosmic intelligence or, and I'm aware that word might sound esoteric, but, it's like the forces or laws of nature. How do you describe it to help people perhaps understand?
Mm. If you look back at your life and he's like, how did you get from here to here? Or how did this happen? It just all happens.
Yeah.
And so there's that kind of practicality of like, I mean, I grew up in a town of less than 4,000 people in farm country, Minnesota. You know, this was not in my even realm of possibility. And so there's just this kind of, whether you call it fate or destiny or whatever, dharma, karma, it just happens. And you can do things to try to prevent it, but I believe that if something is meant to happen, something's meant to happen. And so there's that kind of aspect. But then also you just look at the world around you, and we live in this beautiful, amazing place where you can, you know, walk someplace and pick a flower and you go back the next day and there's 20 more flowers there. Just the abundance and the beauty and the Lakshmi that is just constantly in flow. And how can you not be in awe of that? Totally. Over and over and over again, no matter how poorly we've treated this earth. And it just continues, and modifies and figures it out and eventually may shake us humans off, but it will survive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the question more is how can you not be in awe of it?
Totally. And like you said, in Tantra, the essence of the teaching is that everything is sacred. And so I feel like when I hear people say, like, I'm not spiritual, they don't connect with that phrase maybe.
Yeah.
I do you feel like this lost connection to spirit almost drives a wedge in people's ability to feel connection, meaning, and purpose in life?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because then they're just in their mind.
Yeah. It used to be so innate to us,
Yeah.
to feel connection to spirit, right?
Yeah. And just feel connected in general.
Human spirit too, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So But now the mind is just so powerful. And I mean, the way that I look at it right now, and again, I'm not a scholar in this, so this is just my understanding. But if you look at like the Hindu stories, right, there's always these stories of the asuras and the devas, and one of them is always in
Meaning
control.
like angels and
Yeah, like angels and
devils, if
devils,
you had to.
demons in
Yeah,
some way.
indeed.
And one of them is always, one group of them is always in control, right? And then it gets out of hand, and then something has to happen, and then it kind of goes the other way. And I never really understood that, except now in this day and age, I feel like we are under the spell of the asuras, the demons per se. And it's not certain people, it's a consciousness.
Yeah.
It's a consciousness that has grown from the consciousness of the individuals, and the greed and the power play, and the that loss of connection to nature, which separates us and we just become these machines with these sensory gratification things. And all of that, for decades, for generations now, has created this kind of dark cloud consciousness. And particularly, I would say, being from an American from the US, there's a dark cloud there.
Mm.
And it's not just in the US, it's all around the world now. We're seeing the horrible, horrible things that are happening. And I think it's this consciousness, and people are just, it's like a magnet. They're getting sucked into it if you're not grounded in your being,
Yeah.
in who you are beyond, I'm just this robot human. If you have no sense of that, then you get sucked up into this darkness. And then now you're just a robot within this scheme of greed and power. And so to me, that's what it feels like, and it's helpful for me to remember that,
Yeah.
so I don't start to, I mean, there are definitely certain people who are more problematic.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's not certain people, but to me, it's a consciousness. When I go back home and I see all these people that I know and love who, are caught up in this, I just think, how is that possible? And I just have to remember that it's this kind of swirling that's happened, and people are now just in this cloud, and they can't really get out.
Totally. And you said before, it's like life, you can look at it in one way where it's so beautiful, and how can you not see that? And then they speak about, the devas, the angels being jealous of us in a human body because we get to have this experience. But then, like you said, there are some people who see the world through the lens of all of this suffering
Yeah.
and misery. But I'm curious, I guess, what do you see as the root cause of like that perception, you know?
Well, I mean, I'll give you a couple answers.
Yeah.
One, of course, is because we forgot who we are, right? But in most spiritual circles, people will say that,
Yeah.
that we've forgotten, that veil has been placed. And so we don't understand how amazing and magnificent we actually are, right? Where spirit descended into physical form. And so that's the kind of meta view of it. What do I think in maybe a more earthy, grounded? I don't think there's one thing,
Yeah.
but I would say the battle between men and women,
Mm.
I think, is a huge issue. The masculine, feminine,
Mm.
um, understanding that we are meant to be together to become one. And we are one within ourselves and amongst men and women. But it's such a power play between us, and that creates so many issues, I think. Um, I think that's a really huge one,
Yeah.
a really huge one.
When you say, we are one, it's something that, gets shared. I feel like people have heard that phrase, but
Yeah.
how do you explain that concept?
So for me, um, I guess my experience of it is when I go into deep, deep meditation,
Mm.
there have been occasions where there has been a dissolution of this.
Yeah.
And in that midst, and it's not constant. There have been occasions though, and in that midst, I you don't even want to use the word I, because it is everything is one. Everything is, it's not just connected, it just is. There's just no difference. It's
Yeah.
just different forms.
Yeah.
And so that is to me, that is the source. That is the source. And all of these different forms are aspects of that source, but the source
Yes.
is just that.
Yeah.
And I think one thing when we talk about oneness doesn't mean that, and when we talk about peace, I think sometimes people have this idea of everybody's just all loving and oh, it's so beautiful and everything's okay. But oneness isn't sameness. Oneness is the holding of all the polarities, you know? It's it's inclusive.
Everything interdependent on everything else.
And there is dark and there is light.
Yes.
There is mm, I was going to say good and bad, but that's not really it. There is white and there is black.
Yeah.
It's all part of it's like the Shiva Shakti idea. How do you explain that? One can't exist without the other. The common way of saying it is if you think of a flame, you can talk about the heat and you can talk about the flame, but you can't separate the
Yeah.
two, right?
Yeah.
They're together.
Yeah.
But in order for our minds, our human mind,
Yes.
to be able to grasp it, because our minds only understand what they have created. Our mind only understands what it has created.
Yeah.
And since it didn't create this,
Yeah.
we need to be able to contain it in some way so our mind can get on board.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just flopping around. There's
Yeah.
no grasping of it.
Totally. And I feel like people go after like a dual philosophy or a non-dual, but really you have to understand duality in order to understand
Yeah.
non-dual concepts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It leads you to that understanding and to that realization.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like you answered a question I was going to ask you, which was whether you've had an experience, which I know you have had, where the veil between mind and body or form and formless, self and spirit sort of completely dissolved.
Yeah.
And I guess it's only in experiencing that you have, this knowing of what is possible.
Yeah.
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 So beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm curious, especially with your work as a psycho-spiritual therapist,
Yeah.
the psycho part refers to psychology and revolves around the mind. And you spoke about how important it is to understand the mind. So I'm curious, firstly, I guess, what the mind is to you. Like it's such a big concept. And how the mind influences how we experience ourselves and how we experience the world. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the mind? The mind is really just patterns, right? It's just patterns and it lives in projection and memory. Really, to me, that's what it
In
is.
future and past.
Yeah.
Projections and memory.
Yeah. And how it affects us is it's our filter. So I'll explain kind of how I feel when we come into form, right? So the egg and the sperm come together and there's an embryo and a fetus, and science can explain kind of all of that. But it can't explain that that burst, that growth that happens, right? And it's not the mom who's like, okay, I'm gonna grow a conscious being. there's something else that comes in. And so this is the portal, right? This is the sacred
Yeah.
portal. And to me, that is the life force that comes in. That is the cosmic intelligence that comes in. And that is not unique. What makes it unique is it comes into this vessel, to this vessel, right?
Yeah.
And so in the yogic theory, it starts at the Muladhara, right? At that root chakra. And so it's energy. It's energy. And so it wants to express. So it comes up here to the Swadhisthana, just using this as an organizational tool, right?
Yeah.
Comes up through the Swadhisthana, and there's kind of three main forms of expression. There's sexuality, spirituality, creativity. And in most cultures, sexuality really quickly, don't talk about that, don't think about that, don't touch that, right?
Repressed one.
Yep, really big filter is put over that. Spirituality, oftentimes you're kind of born right into a religion and you're kind of set on your way, or you're not given anything, or some cultures there's a little bit of both, right? And creativity, when you're young, is encouraged, but then at a certain age, it's kind of like, you're 12 years old, you shouldn't be playing like that, you should be reading, or you're 16, you shouldn't be playing like that, you should be working, or whatever. So those filters get put on, and that energy kind of makes its way through that, comes up here to the Manipura, and this is kind of the teenage years, that I'm a boy, I can be this, or I'm 16, I can do this. And then the rules start coming in. You're a girl, you can't do that. Or, oh, you're only 17, you can't do that. Or you're 14, you should be doing this, right? So these kind of shoulds and shouldn'ts start coming in. And so it continues to make its way through that. It gets up here to the heart, to the anahata. And this is where your relationships form, right? You have your friends and your family and lovers and business people. And then it's like, you're a wife. You need to stay home and take care of your family. Or, oh, you're a son. You need to take care of your parents now, right? All the kind of social programming that comes in. So by the time it comes up here to the throat, where it should be like, this is who I am and all my amazingness, it's kind of, this is who I am after everybody else's thoughts and opinions, right?
Laid
Yep.
with the top.
And so it's those filters.
Mm.
I think our work is clearing those filters.
Yeah.
When you say that, all the answers are inside of you, you have everything you need, it sounds like, yeah, I know. But when you think of what you start with, that unlimited potential, the
Yeah.
same thing that has created everything in the world.
Born into a
is
potential
within-
samadhi.
Yes. And then it starts to get all of these patterns, all of these projections, all of these memories, all of this social conditioning and programming.
And this is the mind.
That's the mind.
Holding all of this.
Yeah. And so when we start to clear some of that, we have more space for this to come up.
Yeah.
That truth of who it's meant to be in this form, which is unique. People come all the time and say, can you help me find my purpose? What's my purpose? And I'm not a very good one to ask that, because to me, it's like, well, your purpose is to be an expression. That's really your purpose. Now, some people do, like my mom knew at 9 years old she wanted to be a school teacher. Okay, that's your purpose. I never had anything like that, And I still to this day think that there's still more for me to express.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what my one purpose is. I think that I'm on track,
Yeah.
but I know there's more. And so I keep trying to clear that off. And in the beginning, for most of us, and for me, it was the same. I grew up in a tiny little town of less than 4,000 people. I was raised Christian, Lutheran Christian. And so I didn't even know, to me, honestly, Jewish people were the people in the Bible. Like, I didn't really know that they still existed. Like, that's how sheltered it was. And in my sociology class at Mankato State University, they talked about the Big Bang Theory. And I was like, what? Like, literally, I was 19 years old. What? And I wrote to my pastor. I was like, what is this? And he's like, well, and he was very kind. Some people believe this, but this is what we believe. And that was the moment I knew, like, oh, there's way more out there than what I know. And so many of us go through this, I learned everything I could, thousands of books, workshops, school, just take it in, take it in. But then you get to a point where that's good to expose and to open up your mind to be like, oh, there are other ways to think about this.
Yes.
Then you get to a point where it's about unlearning,
Mm.
no more learning,
Yeah.
And like, I don't read many books anymore. There's so much interesting stuff out there,
Yeah.
and some of it's very valid, but I don't want to take anything more. And I want to experience what it's about.
Mm.
Because a lot of times with meditation, this is a big one. People read about meditation,
Mm.
what they're supposed to be experiencing, so they spend their whole time waiting for those experiences, and they're missing what's actually happening in the moment.
Imposing someone else's experience and stories and not actually inhibiting their own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. I'm curious then. I mean, we're given a body, we have a mind, the body is the home of the spirit. What do you see as the body's role in awakening?
Mm, mm,
Because we're given it
yeah,
for a purpose, like it has its own
absolutely,
dharma, right?
absolutely. And in Tantra, the body is the way to awakening.
Yeah.
It's through the body. Um, and I would say you have to be in the body before you can transcend the body,
Mm.
you know? That's where I think a lot of people, they wanna just bypass that and just be up here, but you have to actually be in the body before you can transcend it. Um, and we're here to be human,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
You look at a lot of the murtis here, you'll see that they sit like this. They sit with one leg crossed and one
You
leg
shared this in
crossed.
class and I loved this point, so
Yep.
please, yeah.
And to me, what that means is you always have one foot on earth and one foot in the spiritual realm.
Mm.
And that's life. That's
Yeah.
the human life.
Yes.
And it's not easy. And I think what happens sometimes for some people, and myself included, I needed to step out of kind of human existence. When I went to India, I just needed to go. And even though I still had to, pay bills and make food and do those kind of things, I really isolated myself from interactions and doing anything outside because I needed to kind of go to that extreme. And I think that's what happens is you kind of, because I had lived I lived in New York City for 15 years, worked in corporate, like really in the human life. And so you kind of go from one extreme to the other. And for me, I had to kind of do that to find that balance. Like, how do I do both? And it's still something that I work with. Yeah. Something that I work with all the time.
Mm.
I talk to Baba about this all the time. I had such a craving for stillness and simplicity and to be in India and just to be in this. And yet my human loves being in Bali, loves teaching, loves doing the work with people. And so it's a constant,
Yeah.
okay, now I need to go spend 3 days in my house and just not do anything, and then I'm out and out and out. So that's really, I think, the work.
Yeah, navigating both the interplay between
Yeah.
everything we're given to operate this, yeah,
Yeah.
human existence, I guess. Yeah.
And sometimes you have to go to the extreme, not everybody.
Yeah,
I did.
it can be necessary to remove yourself for some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, to experience these things which are harder with, the distraction of daily life.
And you look at, the sages and the rishis, right?
Yeah.
And they were in the caves.
Yeah.
People brought them food if they were eating and, and so they didn't have to have that interaction. When you're driving in Ubud traffic and you're stuck for 30 minutes, like, it's really hard to just be like,
Yeah.
everything's meant to be, yeah.
Totally.
So, I mean, I think you have to take that into consideration. And also, there are more and more people who are at a higher level of consciousness who are living in the world,
Yeah.
And so it's not just the ones who are up in the mountaintops that are, I mean, I do think that the ones who are very isolated, there, I think there's levels of consciousness and maybe even levels of enlightenment. I don't know. But the ones who are very, isolated and out of the daily interactions, they do hold a higher realm, Like in Ubud, I don't know anybody in Ubud who's enlightened. I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
I'd say my teacher is self-realized, but to me, it's a different level. It's a different level. And even for me, living in India, I was so clear and really could feel it. Being back here, I'm not as clear.
Yeah.
I can feel it.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard this distinction between awareness and consciousness, which is sometimes, said to be synonymous maybe, but awareness, just is. Awareness is awareness, but then consciousness can kind of move and change, and you can go into higher states, and, substances can take you into higher states. How, what does it mean to be in a higher state of consciousness? You know,
Um,
where is it leading?
it leads to less suffering. I mean, to me, that's the whole, people will say it's not about a goal, but in the end, less suffering.
Yeah.
And that does not mean that bad things don't happen in your life.
No.
It means that you're able to move through them in a different way.
Yes. Your relationship to your experience. See, is that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I suffered from depression from probably about 14 maybe to probably about 35. And so I know what that suffering was. I never want to live that way again. And so all of my work has been to, now that I know I don't have to live that way, when you're in it, you kind of feel like, "Oh, this is just my lot in life. This is who I am." Uh, but I know that's not true. And so, and I'm quite clear on my mind suffering, where I cause my own suffering, right? Um, and my choices to, sometimes I allow myself to suffer. When you look at the horrible things that are happening in the world and people dying, and, I talk to my teacher about this a lot. Like, how do you not be affected by that? And I understand his point of it's just happening, you know, but I choose to feel more into it.
Yeah.
And some people will say, well, that's detachment, or that's bypassing if you don't feel it. And it's not that he's not a caring person at all. He is, but he's at a level of consciousness that he lives, he lives there. It's not a back and forth. And so he sees the game as it plays out. So I look at that as I choose sometimes to suffer and feel really horrible some days when I'm watching what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And it is a choice,
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to make that sound like, because it's too easy for people to say, well, he's just bypassing or something,
Yeah.
because it's not. It's not bypassing. It's just
Deeper understanding of.
it's not, it's like a finer understanding. Because when I'm deep, I feel like this, but it's actually a very fine understanding of the elements at play,
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't really know how to explain it more than that.
No, it is a beautiful description. I feel like, I mean, it's easier to feel what you're saying in your presence, like the energy you're giving off, but I'm sure it will translate through. Um, yeah, so I guess we've spoken about the body, and in Tantra it being like a vehicle for awakening, and then the mind is something we're actually more in a process of unlearning. And I guess I like the yogic map of, the koshas where we start with the physical body and then we have the mental body, but there's a layer between that, which is pranamaya kosha, which is the energy body.
Yeah.
What do you feel is the role of energy in healing?
Yeah. So this is in the school that I teach at, Helix. My curriculum is looking at mental health through the Vedic lens,
Yes.
and the koshas we work with. Um,
Do you want to explain the koshas just to
Sure. So the 5 koshas, the 5 sheaths, the layers of the body. And so you start with the physical body, and not you start with, but there's 5 layers that are all intermixed. But there's the physical body, right? The Annamaya kosha. Then there's the pranic body, the pranamaya kosha, which is the energy body. There's the manomaya kosha, which is the kind of mental, emotional kind of body. And then the vijnana maya kosha, which is the higher intellect,
intuition,
wisdom, that kind of where it's not so constrained by the thinking mind, I guess. And then the anandamaya, right, the bliss body. And so to me, when I work with people and I listen to them talk and I see how they are in their body, I can kind of see if they have a tendency to be like, if they're really caught up in their emotions and just the thinking, right? You want to bring them into those other bodies. You want to bring them into the pranamaya and the anandamaya, anandamaya, sorry, into that energy body and into the physical body. Bring it down in. And if they're, really stuck on the, they're eating crappy food and they're really stuck in the body, then you want to bring them up a little bit more and start to think about how their mind works. And you can kind of go either way. And if they're really into the mind and stuck in the thoughts, you can also lead them, into um, fine tuning into their higher guidance or going, connecting into their ancestors, so you can kind of go above or below. So that's how I work with them in mental health and the pranic body, the working with the energy. To me, there's clearing that happens with it. And there's also the agni that starts to fight, the energy that starts to strengthen within your system. And I always lead people to this, to strengthen yourself from the inside out, because we don't know what's coming our way. And because I work energetically with people, I used to work a lot with rituals and, creating the crystal shield around me and having particular rituals to kind of create, I say it's kind of in a defensive mode, right? To make sure that I'm protected, right? But then, and Baba was the one who really shifted this for me. Now I work in a way, maybe it's the more offensive way, where I have strengthened my inside so much that whatever comes to me, I might get affected, but I'm not going to get knocked out anymore. It just burns off because my strength is from the inside out. And so, I don't know who's coming into my office every day. And they could, bring a lot with them. And so rather than constantly being in this mode, this kind of, protective mode, I'm just like, bring it, because I know that I can burn it off. And so I do a lot of pranayama. I do it to clear my system a lot. Um, and it helps when you do it enough, people can feel their energy body. That's a big difference than knowing about it and reading about it. We read so much about it and people talk about it, and it's just like meditation too. You talk so much and you have all the theory behind it and everything, but until you actually experience it, it's just talk. It's just concept.
Totally.
And so I will often bring people in to work with the energy body so they can feel it. And so when I have them, even if I'm just doing counseling, I try to get them on the table so I can work directly on them so that they actually feel it within themselves.
Yeah. Are there practical ways that even you could speak to in this moment if someone hasn't experienced their energy body and things
Well,
they can do to have a sense of that?
I mean, just energy in general, the classic,
Yeah.
right? The rubbing of the hands together. We had chakra points here. And when you rub your palms together, you create some heat, right? And we know the heat is from the friction there. But when you do it strong enough,
Mm.
and then you just hold your hands together, so just, couple inches or a few
Yeah.
centimeters apart, and you just very slowly start to move them together, you'll get to a point where you start to feel some tension in between the two. And then when you move your hands back and forth slightly, it strengthens.
Mm.
Most people can feel it. Some people can't.
Yeah.
But if you can't, rub your hands together again and try it again. But in the end, that's energy. That's energy. And so if you think about that, if you had a microscope and you just kept pushing it together, pushing it together, pushing it together, that energy would become so dense that it would solidify.
Yeah.
And so when you understand that, then it's like, oh, right, that's what we are.
Condensed.
We know that there's more space in our body than there is matter. We know that scientifically at this point. So what's holding it together? You know?
Yeah, it's so well explained because yeah, it's something we can feel, and it actually, yes, gives an opportunity for recognition of yeah, what this is, that first layer on a myokosha as well.
Yep.
Through the energy body. Yeah, it brings it together really nice.
And if people were here, I would do, there's a Garuda pranayama that my teacher gave me. That's a really good one to feel energy in your system. There's different pranayams that I would give that help to stir that up.
Okay, a few final questions.
Yeah.
So you have, of course, your teacher in India. I know you also worked with a Lama, Tibetan Buddhist Lama. I'm curious what the experience was like the parallels, the crossovers, the difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Lama Doma was her name. And so this was at a time where I was having really strong energetic experiences and I knew that I needed some help. Up until that time, I was very much of, I can do it all on my own and I don't need a teacher. But it became so intense that I knew I needed some help. And I had met Lama Doma when I first moved here. She was doing some talks. And at the time, she's a German woman with short red hair. And at the time she was pregnant, she was probably in her late 30s. And she was doing some talks. She's a Tibetan Dzogchen teacher. Yes. And so Lama just means teacher. So Lama Doma. And I had gone to a couple of her talks when I first moved here. So 4 or 5 years later now, I was really needing some help and I wasn't really finding anything. And then I remembered her. And so I reached out to her and I started to sit with her. Now, again, I'm not, uh, it's never for like, I don't want you to teach me what's written. Like, I don't know what I need, but I know that that's not it. I don't want to read anything more, you know? And so I started to sit with her once a week and we would just sit in meditation.
Yeah.
It was right at that same time, pretty much the same time that I was introduced to Baba. And he and I were messaging back and forth. And then I went to go see him. And what it ended up being is I would go and I would spend 10 days with Baba in India. I would come back to Bali 3 or 4 months. And during that time, I would sit with Lama Doma once a week. And I'd go back to India. Excuse me. And what was happening with Baba is I was having these tremendous energetic experiences. And he's not much for being like, well, this is what is happening and that's for this. And it's just like, what's your experience? Okay, just leave it be. But, I want to know what's happening. So I would come back and I would sit with Lama Doma and she was so helpful in helping me ground it,
Right.
telling me what was happening or explaining what might be happening. And it worked well when I would sit with her in meditation. I would have all these visualizations, and I would explain to her these deities that I was seeing and these figures that I was seeing. And she would say, "Oh, that's this, you know, this deity, this Buddhist deity, and this Buddhist deity," which I didn't know any of them, right? And then I would go sit with Baba, and I would have these incredible visualizations of the Hindu deities, which I didn't really know at that time either. And so I was like, it was kind of that part was a little uncomfortable for me because I was like, am I just being influenced? Like, am I that? I had no grounding that no matter who I'm sitting with, because when I worked with Helix and we worked with, at the time it was called shamanism. Now it's not super proper to say that, but South American shamanism, earth based kind of modalities. I worked really strongly with power animals and stuff. And so it was kind of like no matter where I was, I would have these experiences of that particular thing.
Yeah.
And Doma said, "Oh, you're a rhinoceros." I was like, "A rhinoceros?" And apparently she said, "You're one of those people that's just had so many lifetimes in all these different spiritual kind of traditions that you just pick up it. That little aspect picks up whenever you're with someone." And that was helpful for me because I was like, I don't wanna just be influenced. I wanna know what's mine, not what everybody else's is? Um, and so I sat with her for probably a year and a half, going back and forth between India and Bali, and it worked well because in the end, it's the same thing. We want self-realization. In the end, it's the same thing. But as I got deeper and deeper and deeper and having my own experiences, I realized I was going to need to decide to get on one path.
Yeah.
And the reason was what it felt like to me is in Buddhism, it's always about for me and for the well being of all. And there's always this, opening up, right? Very, like you say it all the time too. With Baba, it's like, pay attention to you. Pay attention to you. What's happening for you. Don't worry about anybody else. It's for you. And now, in the end, of course, it's still so because when you are able to, reach certain levels, it radiates out and it affects everyone. So, in the end, it is the same, but the approach was a little bit different.
Yes.
And I needed direct, just me, no other distraction. I needed his full attention. And so I opted. I got to a point where I had to step away. Even if I stayed in Bali, I was working so much and I was so deep in my journey, like everything was a distraction. And I was kind of one of those typical just put me on a mountaintop. Like that's really where I wanted to be. And so even working was a distraction.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to leave because it was starting to affect. I was cranky being out there in the world. And so I had to choose,
Yeah.
either I stay and I just sit with Lama Doma or I go and sit with Baba. And I chose to go and sit with Baba. Um, yeah. Did that answer your
Oh,
question?
yeah, no, absolutely. It's just so interesting to hear the experience because the most of us, we haven't had that opportunity to sit with a teacher in that way or with a lama.
Yeah.
So no, really insightful.
This is the key thing is because you can go to the ashrams and you can sit in the big groups and you there's an effect of that. But to have direct
Incredible.
contact is very rare,
Very different.
very rare for people of that kind of level of consciousness. And so if you get a chance to do that, do that.
Yes.
And it has nothing to do, especially as Westerners, because we've only heard about all the crazy gurus who have been abusive, right? That's our understanding of it. It has nothing to do with tell me what to do. I mean, there are times, honestly, where I've sat with Baba, like, tell me what to do. And he would just be like, what do you think you should do? It's always a point back, always. There's no giving up of my power.
Yeah.
There is service because I have such gratitude and appreciation. But also, I don't come from guru culture. And so my relationship with Baba is very different than a local person's relationship. I have, he's, bless him, because he has been, his patience, and this is to me why it's so strong. He has always met me in a neutrality.
Yeah.
And he lived with me for 2 years, lived with me. And there were times where I threw temper tantrums. I was frustrated with things. I, was angry about things, and we would talk about it, and I would just be like, blah, 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 whatever. And he would let me talk it through. And it's not that he would just let me go off and he would just sit there. Like, we would have debates or conversations. And then, the next time I'd see him, clean slate. Every single time. That's how you know. And still to this day. And so now it's been almost 8 years
Wow.
that I see him. And every time I see him, clean slate.
It's incredible.
Clean slate. And there's no specialty. He lived with me for 2 years. I don't get special treatment from him, I mean, I know we, maybe there's a little just more friendliness because,
Lived.
but he doesn't treat me more special than anyone else. And this is how you know.
Yeah.
This is how you know. There's a neutrality and not defensive. Even when I'd be like, you did this or you did not do that, he would just, maybe explain it or maybe not.
Yeah.
But it was neutral. And consistently. And so this kind of also comes back to the male-female thing. Through that experience, tremendous healing of the male-female, because I had a lot of issues with men starting back from my father, those father issues where so much of it starts. And there was that to me is one of the biggest healings that I've had because of my relationship with him.
Wow.
Of that, I was met by a man in this energy over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And there was healing was allowed to take place because of that.
It's so powerful.
So powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that story. It's so nice. Yeah, wow. I guess to tie it all up, like that chapter, yeah. And of course, like so much of this podcast revolves around meditation. So I would love to hear which meditation techniques, I guess, have been most impactful or transformational in your self-inquiry and realization.
So it goes in phases and chapters. Silence is always for me just the best.
Yeah.
There's a technique that I teach that has to do with mindfulness, of bringing your mind back to the breath. And that was really helpful for me when I first started, where, it's boats on the river and thoughts are your boats. And every time you realize you're in that boat, drop it, come back to your breath. That process was good for me for a while.
Yeah.
Sitting in silence then was really powerful. I do a lot of pranayama and chanting now.
Chanting out loud.
Yeah, sometimes, but oftentimes just
Silent.
yeah, inside as well. There's something about pranayama that, because everything I do is so energetically tied, the pranayama helps me to go in and clear a little bit. And then most of my meditation, I just like to feel that energy. And, and then that allows me, if your body is calm, your mind will calm. If your mind is calm, your body will calm.
Yeah.
And once that kind of meets, then you can release.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
So there's not a specific
Yeah.
technique.
It's always
Like,
changes.
yeah. And I think that's important
Yeah.
for people to understand that find your portal in,
Yes.
find the way in. I think ultimately everyone should get to silence. I think that is the ultimate meditation. But just because you can't sit all of a sudden for 10 minutes in silence doesn't mean you can't meditate.
Absolutely.
Find your way in, and then you build.
Yeah, and let it evolve as you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it should. So good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my
For
pleasure.
sharing all of your wisdom
Yeah,
and for your time.
thank you.
It was amazing.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Jana. If you felt inspired by her and want to connect with her more, I have amazing news. She has a retreat coming up in India in October this year from the 1st to the 7th called Finding Purpose, where she'll be taking 10 people to meet her teacher in India. And this would truly be one of the most authentic and incredible ways, not only to experience the spirit of India, but also to experience the truth and depth of yourself under both her guidance and her teacher, who she spoke about in this podcast. So I'll leave a link in the show notes that you can find if you want to know more. Otherwise, feel free to check out her website as she offers heaps more, as well as one-on-one containers. Thanks, as always, for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next meditation, insight, or conversation.